this really elaborate prank on you.
All right. Like what? Like everyone began?
And
That would be fun.
oh, sorry. I'm just going to shut off the music and then we can get started.
I also fall asleep in the car, so I was just like literally waking up at the same time. So you forgive me.
Oh, yeah, forgive you.
For being slow. Well, you will, but I don't know if they will.
Okay, so I'm going to skip the introduction. I had an elaborate introduction planned, but we sent it out.
Now I'm interested.
We send it out via email so everyone knows who Stan is in 2 sentences. He built one of the largest websites in 2003, has started many companies, worked at PayPal, is the product head for Messenger, also started this guild called the NFX Guild that helped companies, especially focused on network effects. So brief, short version, and then I'm going to just dive straight into it. You ready?
Yeah.
Great.
Let's go.
I guess my first question is that ever since, one of the things I like saying about Stan is like he's the OG of growth and growth hacking. So he was the first and has stayed up to date with it. But ever since growth became a thing, which it wasn't always a thing, when should companies start focusing on growth? And to elaborate further, one of the tensions I've seen is that a lot of companies decide to build a product, like see a couple of hundred or maybe a couple of thousand users, and then immediately say, oh, now we have to focus on growth. And that's really a tension because it's not clear you have product market fit and you should be iterating on the product versus focusing on growth. So when should folks start focusing on growth?
Yeah. I guess a bunch of things, a bunch of components of the answer really depend on how you define growth altogether, and there are a bunch of inconsistencies in there, right? So there is sort of like classical definition of growth is what you're describing, which is product found, you have a product market fit, and then you're now focusing on growing that thing. So in that definition, it's all about retention, and you have to figure out a way to build retention first, and you know what your retention looks like, even if it's on a small group of people. You whatever, you have 100 people, but they use you every day, or you have 1,000 people, but they're buying, if you're like whatever, some sort of marketplace, they're buying periodically whatever you're selling. And so you know you have some sort of a product market fit on a small scale, and then you're like, okay, so now I have it, now I can start growing. So in that definition, then what you do is a bunch of sort of like straightforward things. I mean, they sound straightforward, but once you start digging deeper, you can sort of realize that they're not necessarily straightforward, and you start focusing on channels, you start focusing on like building categories, you start like trying to deepen the engagement, and we can dive into that. But so this is like sort of like one definition of what growth is. Another way, and that's how growth hacking being defined, even though I hate the term, is it's more on the marketing side, and that is. Really, so you have a product, how do you really pitch the product in such a way so people actually understand what that product is about, and it starts growing as a result of that. And so like in Facebook paradigm, it's that's called growth marketing, and which you know better even than me. So that's kind of growth marketing. So again, like how are you thinking about funnels in such a way so they're better optimized? How do you think about marketing in such a way that you actually inform the product decisions in such a way so the product starts resonating with people better? And that stuff you can do even before you have product market fit. That is sort of like one way of thinking about product building, which is when you are starting to realize that, wait a second, if I think about the product this way, then I build one thing. And if I think about the same problem in a different way, then I build a slightly different thing. And which one resonates with people better? Because sort of like language defines product altogether. And then that's kind of like the third thing, which is like you might start thinking about growth even before you are actually even build the product. And you are starting to think about like, what are the network effects there, and like what is the what do people want from my product? How does my product help, like whatever, with regards to you kind of look back and you say like, what am I trying to solve? Like, what is a basic human need that my product will help to do better? And I mean, obviously everyone is working on their own product here, but the idea there is that if it's like social network or it's a feature inside social networks, then you can say like, what can we do in such a way so people feel smarter in the eyes of people that are communicating over whatever product you have. Because that's a basic need. Like, I'm going to do that. If I do something and then I look smarter in the eyes of people who get it, then I might do it more. And then those people would want to do the same thing, and then it goes on and on. Or you think about something else. Like, for example, I want to buy something and it's very cheap. And then how do you make people feel that whatever they're buying is cheap, or whatever other motivations there is. Like, you want to buy the highest quality thing, or you want to buy a unique thing, if it's like some sort of a marketplace or it's some sort of an e-commerce play or whatever there is. So if you're starting to think about it this way, then it's like altogether, then you're starting to think about growth as a precursor to actually even building the product, because you start thinking about how the product grows even before you start building that thing. And that's kind of the third definition. And they're all interconnected, but I guess the main question is like, what do you mean by growth? Because it can mean each of those things. And at which point you are moving from one stage of the growth to another one, right? Because like once you found product market fit, then you definitely are just doing that first thing, which is all hands on deck. How do we work every channel? My people are coming from SEO, my people are coming from invitations, my people are coming from email, my people are coming from SMS, and you're doing all that. And then you instrument the whole thing in the sense that you're starting to look at growth from the standpoint of not just how you're growing, but you break it down into like how many people are new, how many people are actually stopping to use your product today, and how many people are resurrecting, meaning is that they used your product a long time ago and now they're starting to use you again. And so and then you can start focusing on each of those three categories and so forth, so on. So all of those things are different, slightly different, but I personally like to think about it from the very get-go, like from the very early stage, before you even start thinking about the product. Is it's like, how can I talk about whatever I'm building in such a way so it's actually interesting to people, and then as a result of that, I'm going to build it. Well, and as a result of that, I'm going to end up building it in a very different way. So, slightly convoluted answer to your question, and longer than probably people wanted to hear. But I'm waking up, so.
Well, welcome to San Francisco. It's totally waking up. Are we recording?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this out there. Given Stan's framework, what are people interested in? And a show of hands is sufficient. Are you guys interested in growth post product market fit? Are you interested in, who's interested in growth post product market fit? Okay, not that many. Interested in the product marketing, aka how to talk about the product itself. Okay, and then interested in actually thinking of growth techniques and network effects before building the product. Okay, so it sounds like people are interested in that in reverse chronological order, and I think it would be useful to prioritize those in your answers to the next follow-up question. So I guess my next obvious question is, what are some of the key or basic techniques when thinking about building network effects into a product? And it would be good if you describe 3 types of products, which would be consumer products, subscription-based products, and the newer types of SaaS products that have more ground up adoption.
Right. So it's like 3x3 matrix.
So techniques.
No, but I'm saying, you're saying on per product, a few techniques on per product. Again, like on so there are different types of network effects, right? So some of them are stronger. So there are a couple of them. On technique side, so first you have to figure out like what type of network effects you have, because some of them are sort of like built in, some of them bolted on, and for example, when you are dealing with something like social networks, then that's probably the strongest one, which is like the biggest feature of any social network or any social networking service, is that everyone is on it, and that is the feature. And so reach defines everything, and so bigger you get, stronger the network effects are. And it's like there are a bunch of charts to prove that. So basically, your biggest feature is your network effect. That's hard to come by, and because like network effect is a product type of a thing, that's hard to come by. If you look at something like Amazon, for example, they didn't have any network effect. They didn't have any network effects at all, but they built them in, and those are pretty powerful ones. Like, for example, they started, and they have now multiple network effects, but they started with Prime, and that's pretty strong thing from the network effect standpoint, is that because think about it this way. And I don't think people genuinely think about it this way, and I don't know if Amazon thought about it this way, but what they did is that you are practically paying them for the right to buy more from them. And that's what Prime is. Because like, if they got you to convert, then you're like, I'm not needed, I'm going to go there because I'm already paying for it. Costco did the same thing. The reason why you go to Costco is because, and all the profits is actually coming from all the Costco profits are coming, like I think 100%. It's coming from the membership fees, because they don't make any money on anything else. Everything else is just covers the cost. But it hasn't been sort of like conceived this way. But that is pretty strong network effect, because people are people are paying money to go and buy from there. So I guess I'm starting with like subscription-based services and other stuff. So like if you start thinking about it this way, how do you get people to pay you for the right to use the service? And it's harder to do than it is, because people generally don't like to pay for stuff, and it's like the difference between sort of like free and the dollar is way bigger than the difference between $1 and $100, because it's like basically difference between free and paid. But nevertheless, so if you can get people to pay $1, then you probably can pay them, make them to pay $2, and so forth, so on. So the first technique is like literally like sit down and try to figure out, if it's a subscription service, what you're actually selling and what the subscription is about, and if you can pile more in it. Another technique is categories, in the sense that, let's take eBay. Or let's take Amazon, actually, better example again. People started to use it to buy books, right? And retention was pretty sort of flat for a very long time. But then they introduced like new categories. And then turns out people who are buying books are also picking up some other stuff. And that actually deepened engagement. So that would have made sense to do, even if the margin on all the original stuff, on all additional stuff was 0 or negative potentially, because you are building engagement and you are building network effect that will actually increase the buying power for that first original category. And that's generally how they ended up thinking about it, and that's why they kept margins so low for so long. It's just because it allowed them to build that stuff. And again, like I'm making big examples because everyone can relate to them. But that type of thinking is relevant to any startup that is in first, like in subscription startup, or to the e-commerce startup, for example. So if you are doing some sort of like social service, then you have to really like think once or twice or three times about like what will make people tick. And the things that generally tends to work lately, given that there is general overload with basic services, is like, again, that thing that I mentioned is that what can I do that will make me look cool in the eyes of others, and that's the basic technique that's there, and sometimes it leads to content production. Like for example, like Snapchat is that in a sense because like they continue to produce content that continues to enable you to do things that you can't do anywhere else, and continue to be able to project coolness to the eyes of other people that you're talking to. And that's kind of foundational, and then you build like a bunch of like sort of like lightweight game dynamics on top of that, like strikes and things like that. Streaks, yes, thank you. Again, like waking up. So you start building that stuff on top of that, and then it works even better, right? Because like then you go into how many times a day you can look cool in the eyes of people you're communicating with, one way or another. So that would be basic technique there. Then technique from the company perspective, and I don't know how big each company is, but it really helps to align everybody about like around like one metric, and it doesn't really matter what that metric is, but it's very much matters for it to be one. I mean, as long as it's like no less than 3 people. If it's like less than 3 people, then it's probably doesn't matter that much because you can keep everything in your head. But the moment it's more than 3 people, it's hard because unless you figure out a way to control what everyone does on every minute basis, people are just going to go in their own way. Unless you figure out the right metrics that at any given time everyone can just sort of like, wait a second, how what I'm doing actually going to contribute to that goals that we have. And that's also a powerful technique, right? Because before you go into anything, that generally a good product building technique, but it somehow helps with growth a lot, which is if you just agree on goals before you do anything else with people that you're working with, that really helps to answer a lot of questions down the line, because you can constantly go back to that and say, it's like, so does it contribute to that goal or it doesn't? So that's second technique. And these are organizational techniques more than anything else, but they're extremely powerful. The last one, also organizational. And I'm sort of like a big fan of organizational techniques now, and like all these hacks, because they tend to be like just as important as just general growth hacks. It's just like brain hacks, which is like, what's the most important things that we all agree we are not going to do? And the reason why it's helpful is because we all creative people, we come up with ideas every single minute. And if there is one thing that everyone agrees is very important, but we are not going to do because other 3 things that we are working on are more important today, it provides amazing framework to sort out any newcomers. Because whenever anyone says like we should be doing that, then the question you ask is that, is it more important that these important things that we all agreed is important, but we are not doing because we can't, because others are more important? And then people are like, oh, maybe not. And then everyone goes. Or that thing that no one is working on, but is important, being replaced by another one that we just came up with, which is even better, but we are not working on it. So then this way the bar of like, let's drop something that I'm working today and start working on something new becomes really, really high, and people tend to finish stuff. which is just as important as sort of like starting. So if you agree on goal, if you come up with one metric that matters, and if you come up with one thing that is super important but you just can't work on because we're working on more important stuff, like this is sort of like good framework for any company that is larger than 3 people to make progress all together. So that's kind of organizational part. I feel like I somewhat covered the growth techniques, but not really, because like the question people really like to ask, and maybe that's what you're asking, like what is one thing that works from growth perspective right now, and that actually hasn't changed over the last couple of for the last couple of years, I would say, which is the sort of like the close proximity tends to work the best, in the sense that if there is something that you and that works better and better now, if there is really something that you can do on your phone that then others are sort of like interested, and that are the people sort of like around you, because you're just like, you see me doing something and you're like, wow, that's amazing. The latest thing that did work, obviously, was Pokemon Go. The reason it worked is because, like, when someone walks around and does something, you want to know what the hell is going on, and that is a viral hack that they figured out, which is like, oh, I'm just doing that thing with my phone. So from that standpoint, what I've seen somewhat working is that if you can get people to do some weird gesture that will somehow make people around them to ask, what is it that you've done? Like, I don't know, like for example, I don't know, if I can like do this in order to do a video to stabilize the video of everyone around me, and somehow it produces cooler video, I'm making it up, then then people will be like, so why did you just hold the phone to your heart? And if you say like, oh, this is a way to produce a cool video, people will try that. That will be pretty effective. Now, it needs somehow to contribute to producing a cool video. That's up to you to figure out, but I'm just sort of like laying out the framework of how to think about that stuff.
Got it. So I think the one piece that...
And I can be much more concise and shorter if you think that I'm just going too wide. So you just, it's a small group enough, just tell me like, cut it short and I will. So.
Cool. Anytime you want him to cut it short, say,
just
please move on. So one of the things that you implied was that network effects can be built or bolted on in all product types, whether or not it exists inherently in the product or not. So one particular product type that I'd like to focus on, because a lot of people here work on it, is SaaS companies, because they're now relying on organic growth, bottoms up within the company, as opposed to having traditional outbound sales. Mm-hmm. And I guess like in that scenario, it's very easy to say, oh, go sell to the IT admin and they'll insist everyone uses it. But how do you build network effects in products, and have you seen other examples other than Dropbox that's been able to do this well? And Slack's a great one.
Slack is a great one, yes. So there are a couple of things. Well, it's hard. It depends on the domain, right? So okay, we'll talk about like sort of personal experience. So the only we actually did 2 SaaS companies, interestingly. But so one SaaS company that we did in healthcare IT space, and don't ask me how I even ended up there. It was called GIF, actually. It's still called GIF, but it just got merged with another public company called Castlight. Actually, it's closed like a month ago. So I started that thing, but the idea there changed many times. What ended up working from the and it's healthcare, and so it's like very weird. But what ended up working in there, and what I've seen working in few other places, is that if you can somehow cross-pollinate, it depends on the product, but let's say if that was for health benefits for companies that are for self-insured companies, and it was for their benefits department. That's basically the software that the company was selling. What ended up working from network effect standpoint is that turns out all the benefit consultants and all the people who are in HR on benefit, they actually A, know each other, B, like to talk to each other, C, have a bunch of things to talk to each other about. So, and they're in constant touch with each other. So if somehow through your software you can actually enable that, that is ending up to be pretty powerful network effect. In our case, again, if I'm a HR person in one company and I'm responsible for putting the benefits together for my company, and so what they do is that they go around, they survey the market, they pick up different benefits from different insurance companies, and they package it all up and they put it together, and they find their underwriter. It's a complicated process, but the bottom line is that they all know who the best newcomers is, what the best process is, what are the best benefits are, what's average market rate for each benefit, what are the premiums for different products and other stuff. So what you do is that you try to enable like simple chat service inside your product between those people across companies. Because let's say you sell to Apple and Google, and so turns out it's the same people that go back and forth anyway. They from one company to another, or so they all know each other. Number one. Number two, if you sold to Apple but you didn't sell to Google, then they right now the way they deal with each other is that it's like they get on the phone, they talk to each other, they exchange ideas about like new startups that are selling different stuff to them, and they're doing that. So what you do is you just say, okay, so who do you want to talk to, and you try to enable it in the software, because if Apple already bought that, then those guys are spending like 3 hours a day in your software. So if you tell them that they can talk to other benefit people in other companies without actually leaving the software, it's convenient to them. They will do that because the context hasn't changed, and so and you have to build few bells and whistles around that. Like for example, if there is a program that I'm looking at right now in my software, I should be able to like grab a link and send it over, and it should be like seamless. It should be easier for me to do than to grab the same link in some sort and cut and paste it into the email and send it over. Because like otherwise, why would I do it this way? But if you can build that in some sort of like HIPAA compliant way and enable that type of communications, then all of a sudden, next thing you know is that Apple's people who build that in Apple and who are your customers are talking to people at Google. Both examples are hypothetical. Talking to people at Google who haven't sold, who haven't bought your software yet, and next thing you know, they will call you and they will ask you about that, because they are not users, and there is some sort of an interface, lightweight interface that you built for them on the receiving end, but they're like, I want the full thing, can you come and pitch us? So, and an enterprise sales thing is, you still have to go pitch, because they still have to pay you a lot of money. But in enterprise sales thing, it's who makes the first call makes all the difference. Literally, in the sense that if company calls you and says, "Come and pitch us," the probability of deal being closed is like whatever 20 times higher than another way around, and for natural reasons, right? And just a simple human nature, and so that type of thing works. Another thing that
come around and just grab one of the rolly chairs.
Another thing that we built is that for, again, like I'm just talking from experience for this software, is that one of the products that the platform had was challenges, which is sort of like ways for people in the companies to stay healthier. By doing different challenges and logging it in, like whatever, walking 3 miles a day and other stuff, challenging each other and doing all that. So that's kind of virtue of the product. But then what we did is that we did like simple things. Like you could actually, from a product, as an employee of the company, there was like a big button, thank your HR for bringing that product to you, and people were doing it. It doesn't have to be much, but people who were enjoying the product, they were actually thanking their HR, and HR were getting that feedback in real time about people who use that thing in a company for using that product, and no one does that for some reason. We were the first, I guess, to do it, but from the standpoint of lock-in perspective and from the standpoint of renewal, is like, what do you think it does when the time of renewal comes up and those HR people is like, we're getting a lot of love from our employees for using your product. Of course we're going to renew, versus like a bunch of other stuff that we bought. We never know whether it's working, whether it's not working. We're running the surveys and other stuff, but we don't get love. And that helps them with reviews and other stuff. So that's like sort of like semi-network effect, but it increases retention quite considerably. And that's a simple thing. It's just like, how do you involve psychology into the nature of your software building when you're thinking about SaaS. And so that worked well for us. So these are kind of like things that end up working. It all comes down to like basic human nature and basic utility. So you have to provide service. That is like number one, right? But now everyone is overwhelmed with all the services that are out there. So then how do you leapfrog? The way you leapfrog is through figuring out how do you make it appealing on a human way to whoever is the buyer, one. And second, how do you reach that buyer through means that are not necessarily traditional, not through the sales, but through the network, because they all know each other, they all talk to each other. Like, another example is like IT professionals, right? So I remember I was telling that to Splunk guys when they were just started in 2004, and they did that, and that worked for them, and Splunk actually grew. Now a big company, big public company, they grew in large part because of that, because it connected all the IT data guys on the back end, and so that moved them from IRC chats to actual there was no Slack, but into the more of that type of the interface interconnected. And so sort of like IT guys it turns out the IT guys in large companies, they are way more likely to have fun talking to other IT guys in other companies than to anybody in their own company. Just the nature of IT guys in large companies. And if you actually can enable that, that's the best sell thing for your tool altogether, because yes, they don't have credit card, but then they go to their manager and say like, I want that tool, it works because all of my other people are using it and it doesn't cost that much, and that kind of gets in. And obviously everyone is doing sort of open sourced thing now with a service on top of that. I'm skeptical in terms of like how big that whole thing gets. Like a bunch of companies obviously have been fairly successful with that, but like how big the whole thing gets, I don't know. I haven't seen it like really working to.
You're talking about the open source model.
Yeah, open source model with service on top as a way to monitor.
Yeah. Okay, so switching tack a little bit, and I think you've answered this question partly, but and
I don't see that. Do more of that, because like, I feel like I keep talking. So.
Yeah, someone said time out. But I want to switch tacks a little bit, and you've answered this question. How do you optimize for growth on mobile? Because obviously, like things like build something insanely great, get like the App Store to feature you, do some like PR, and then buy some cheap installs to like further propagate the app, no longer works. Like that is a done, tried, and impossible method to grow your app via. And you mentioned some things, like you said figure out a gesture, but not everything is going to have a unique gesture which you can like look at and then make happen. I think the psychology piece of it is still valuable. See if you can connect people or hook people on like some sort of feeling, some sort of psychology, whether it's like, you know, people are narcissistic or like or people want to communicate with their own kind or whatever the case might be. But what are some like good ways to now grow more? Like let's say you build an app and it has great utility, you know there are people who want it. How do you get that app to the people who want it?
How do you reach them?
Yeah.
Do you know that there are people who want it, or do you just believe there are people who want
You
it?
believe.
You believe.
I mean, the other one is...
Yeah, you believe. Yeah, it's a tough question, right? So ideally, you try to find, like, unless you somehow find some subculture where that thing sort of like can proliferate itself, it would be really hard. I'll give you an example, right? So in theory, if you build the best teens app, you can make it work in one school. In theory, like because
Best what app?
Best app for teens that does something.
Okay.
Let's say it's communication. Let's say it's the next stage communication app for whatever teenage girls. So teenage girls.
Actually, can I switch the topic
Yeah.
a little bit, because those have inherent network effects. Let's pick a utilitarian app.
All right, like what?
Any ideas for a utilitarian app? Come on, guys.
It's a
I know-
flashlight.
No, that's not. Something that has real utility.
USI.
Okay, here you go. Like, let's say it's a personal finance app.
All right. Personal finance app. Yeah, so with personal finance app, you'd better to figure out ARPU relatively quickly, or make some sort of a determination about the ARPU. So with personal finance,
About what?
Average revenue per
Yeah.
user.
and if specifically, like we are talking about personal finance app. So if we do have personal finance app, then I would start with business model. I would try to figure out what is there that like you're probably gonna be trying to make money somehow on that thing. Probably, presumably, like it's either lead gen to those banks. There are a couple of ways to make money there, right? So one is that you somehow figure out a way to sit inside the transaction. So I wouldn't recommend that. That's probably not going to grow. So the second thing is you sort of like you have a personal finance app. That app manages your finances, and then you are starting to throw offers to you based on how your finances are figured out, and then those offers obviously have high value to whoever is giving you those offers, and so those people are paying you. Like example would be, you know that I'm looking for a right car because I'm saving money, and you're saying it's like, oh, here's just the right car for you. Such a lead is probably whatever $300, so you make money on that. You can probably calculate what that ARPU is, and you can also figure out what that ARPU is with probably like whatever 1,000 users. So you have to figure out a way to get to 1,000 users, and you have to figure out a way to prove that that app is retaining, because that you're actually providing real service. That type of app doesn't need to have network effect. It needs to provide like service to you and to whatever, like 20 people that you know, and you would be able to build potential network effect on top of that if you wanted to. But sequence would be make it useful for yourself, then make it useful to like whatever 30 people you know who keep using it. At that point, try to figure out ARPU. You can estimate it. You can say that's how I'm going to make money. I'm going to make whatever $500 over the course of the next year because of this and this and this assumption. and based on that, once you figure that out, you are like, okay, so I can pay up to $300 to acquire new users. So I'm gonna take whatever $3,000 and they're gonna buy a bunch of users and they're gonna see if my assumptions actually hold. And you go out there and you definitely can acquire those people, because at that time of the pricing you can target as granularly as you want. You can target exactly who you want. You can target exactly the same people who are using it and enjoying that today, like 30 of your friends who are already using it, and then you take that up and you see if those assumptions hold. And the whole process probably would take half a year to like 9 months, and then you know if you are into something or you're not into something. And then from there you can start building network effects on top of that. Like for example, like I wouldn't go as in a banal way of like paying people money for invitation, but I would try to figure out something like group buying, for example, or group servicing. Like, but if like 3 people take that offer, then maybe you can get a bigger discount from there, and you can like make all the services on that app for free and things like that. So that's kind of would be my framework. Again, like I'm just making it up as we go. You ask a question, but I think it would hold. I think it would hold.
So,
that's not to advise anybody to go into the personal finance app business.
yeah, but so one of the things you mentioned that for mobile, paid acquisition is pretty important, like based on the description that you just gave. So what are the most effective paid acquisition channels?
Right. And it's not self-serving, but Facebook. The reason why is because you can target amazingly well. I'll give you specifically. What I mean by that is that it's still very much not fairly priced if you are capable of doing micro-targeting. And what I mean by that is, let's say you figured out that your product is working amazingly well for, I want to make some sort of weird example, for everyone who plays hockey in Minnesota, for example. And your strength there is that there is nobody out there who is targeting people who are playing hockey in Minnesota. Most likely, or they are being targeted by everybody, but they're not being targeted like that. So, so basically, everyone else is paying $1 a person, but you figured out that people who play hockey in Minnesota are likely to buy your product and pay you $100 for it because it's important to them. That means that you actually can overbeat everybody by a factor of 10. That means that everybody who plays hockey in Minnesota just gonna see your ads. And it might not be like a large group, but if you figure out what they want to buy, that is amazingly valuable. Think about it this way. Again, like if you figure out, like making it up. Let's say you're selling jerseys that says I graduated from Princeton in '99. I didn't, but as an example. No one else is selling that jersey. Let's say for some reason it resonates incredibly well with everybody who graduated from Princeton in '99. That means you can target them. Let's say 50% of them want to buy it because it's so freaking cool that they have to. But you can target them. No one targets people who graduated from Princeton in '99 and paying $50 for that person. And let's say you're selling that jersey for $300, and let's say they're buying it. That also is scalable across all colleges, across all years, and making it up again. But actually, it's not stupid. I actually like it. No, don't do it. So it's scalable across colleges, across years, and obviously people are bidding for those people, but no one is going to be paying $25 a person unless they're selling like jewelry, because the average CPM for all of them is going to be like whatever, I would guess, but let's say $3. You probably can beat 6, 7, or 8. So you can buy a lot of those, you can sell a lot of those jerseys before anyone gonna actually catch up. Now, not totally scalable, it's not necessarily startup, it's not a $10 billion idea or anything like that, but that will work. And that is applicable to actually positive something like that will work. So, and that is applicable across categories, and you can go and try to figure out how do you employ that framework to do whatever you are doing. So, from that standpoint, Facebook works today. And then you can figure out how you scale that, right? So if you want to go international, there is like whatever audience network, you can try to do it on Instagram, it's probably going to work like if you're going into the deeper engagement level. We are trying to do a bunch of stuff on Messenger, like it's going to be like ads on Messenger when you can actually open up thread in Messenger. So if you can somehow figure out high-priced item where you can actually pick up that conversation and automate certain parts of that, but then figure out the right handover to a person, you're going to be able to do a lot of sales, and people are already doing it where we enable that, like in Asia, for example. About to make sort of like the revenue is ramping up pretty nicely. Again, like there is an ad, you open up thread, doesn't work for everything, but if you want to buy a Mercedes, that works perfectly fine, because it makes sense for Mercedes dealership to put a person on another end who actually will answer all of your questions, and if 10% of them actually end up in sale, then it's like amazing. It can lead to like download Mercedes app, so you can do like bunch of stuff there that will increase your probability of buying, things like that.
Cool. So I want to switch tacks a little bit to your work at Facebook. So there was a period in time when everyone thought bots and conversational interfaces were going to take over mobile and replace all our native apps.
Was there that time?
Yeah, there was a time. Everybody was building a conversational bot. I don't think it's happening. I think it's kind of died down. So A, will bots make a comeback? B, can there be standalone businesses? Or are they just great add-ons to existing apps? And what are the best use cases for bots?
Mm-hmm. So I can sort of like talk a little bit about how I see it generally from our perspective, and then we can talk about bots altogether.
Let's just make sure it's short, because I have a lot of questions.
All right. Well, then I can say, then I'm going to be really short. So I do think that bots are sort of like a means to an end. They're not an end. The end is right now sort of like a successful connection between people and business, or between people and app, and bots are there to help that thing, but they're not there necessarily to be fully conversational and do any of that type, because I think it's going to be a long time before people actually going to be like fully be in conversational interfaces and fully enjoy that thing. I do believe that in certain areas, bots are standalone businesses. Like we have a bunch of companies like in travel space, but they tend to be somewhere else. Like for example, there is a company called Snapdeal. They're in India. They're in Canada, but they're focusing on India. They're doing like a lot of. They're making a lot. They're doing. They're entirely on Messenger. The revenue is growing really, really fast. It's like in millions now. I don't think they're going to go anywhere else, but it's a unique circumstance because, again, two things. One is it's high-priced item. B, people are on mobile, and that's how they do it. And three, the cost of labor is cheap, so you can actually enable people to answer questions when bots can't. And so you figured out that handover, and so unique circumstances like that, the whole thing works. But it's not always like that. I'm done.
Does anyone have questions about bots? We might as well roll them out right now. Yep.
So we develop a mobile app, and with the App Store, there's a dedicated developer relations team that helps you prime your app for being featured and understand what you need to do. Is there any kind of developer relations team like that for Messenger bots?
Nascent, but yes. I can hook you up. Yes.
Great.
Not to the extent that they have it, but I can hook you up later.
And also, Hussein from Snapdeals is a good friend, so he's going to be very pleased that we're talking about it.
Of course.
Anyone else? Rebots. Okay. Aaron, you don't have a bot question?
Stay alive already yelled at each other about bots.
Yes.
It seems really like there's a couple of kinds of bots. There's like pure entertainment value bots where it's like, you can create your own AI that will live on after death through Facebook Messenger chat. And then there's like actually like value creating bots. So you talk a little bit about the value creating bots, like the travel. What do you think of like the entertainment ones? Do you think that they're onto something?
Well, it depends, right? Again, like it depends on the pitch, right? So if you pitch what you just said as, if you think about it, like there is one thing, it's like if you pitch it as a way to immortality, then I think there can be something. Meaning is that, basically what you're saying is that, okay, so here's the bot, and that bot gonna study all the conversations while I'm alive, and so when I'm sort of not here, it's practically transferring me into that bot, and then that bot is actually going to be there, and then all the people can continue to talk to that bot like it's talking to me, and that's my path to immortality. I don't know if it's entertainment, it's pretty dark. But I think something like that might have legs. Something like hooked new types of content that is sort of like streamlined for messaging experiences, text experiences, whether it's like short form of sorts or it's a different type of video content, I think will work. There is an interesting show in Norway, out of all places, when it's like it's a TV show, but the way they're doing it is very different when they are. So basically, they're releasing like 2-minute clips, like multiple times a day, and that's basically conversations about. It's completely not interesting show, but the format is interesting. It's about it's sort of like about life of people in the class, and it's basically a bunch of dialogues during the day that's happening between people, but they're kind of happening in real time, and they're releasing like 2 minutes episode all day long, and then on Saturday they do the whole hour when they all come together and they just play the whole thing as one. And I don't know if this is it, but I do believe that new types of content like that will be there, and they're better suited for sort of like shorter time spans that we all have right now. Snapchat obviously experimenting with a lot of that stuff, and I think some of that will work great.
Sorry, is it a related question?
Yeah, it's a question. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's something you can share, but we'll just say like kind of based on what you see at Facebook, that the global bot usage is trending up or down.
Well, definitely up.
Up, okay.
More than US?
More than US. US is sort of behind.
Really?
Like in Australia, he is where he is growing fast. Yeah.
Can we double click on the Snapdeals example for a second? Do you think it's working because paid cost per chat or CPA are low because no one else is bidding there? Is it a more highly converting channel? Is that why it's working?
I think it's all of those.
Can you dissect the pieces that you think are unique to that as a channel and why founders should kind of focus on those pieces to build the most effective bots?
I also don't want to like talk about like
generally speaking, not just about that.
Yeah. So those ads are extremely high performing ads. They're beating everything on newsfeed today. The open thread apps. When you tap on it and it opens up thread, because it's sort of like it's very much primed. And it's very much primed, and so conversions end up being way higher because then your experience is very much can be completed on mobile altogether, and you have a hand holding at the moment when you need that hand holding. So you're interested in a service, you already established that, so intent is right there, and then the medium is optimized for you closing that transaction through combination of sort of like some sort of send receive API, some sort of automation, and some sort of a hand holding. And so that optimization tends to produce very higher outcome on anywhere where it has been tried. It's working here as well. So for any lead gen type of businesses which you might sort of like squarely pegged a Snapdeal in just because it's like whatever in travel, it ends up being very effective. So it's a combination of these three.
And is it full transactions that are occurring in the bot, or is everyone using bouncing somewhere else?
That depends, but when you can actually complete the transaction in the bot, then it's even higher thing. But we don't have as many credentials as we would like on file, especially internationally. So we have a bunch in US, not internationally because we're just starting,
Right.
but most of the usage is internationally. But whenever there is a way to close the transaction right in bot, the whole thing goes way higher. But statistically speaking, I cannot attribute that just to that because maybe it would have been higher in those people because the group is small. So I don't want to like over promise. But early data looks good, but it's not conclusive, and causality is hard to establish right now. Correlations there.
Did you say it's only available in Asia right now? So is that app on it?
No, they're worldwide. We enabled them like 2 months ago worldwide. So they're enabled here. But what's enabled in Asia is ads inside Messenger inbox. So those are only available in Asia. Yeah, well, actually in 2 countries, in Australia and in Thailand now.
When you say it's available, is it still white label, need to call FB to enable, or is it enabled as in the...
No, it's in ads interface. If you go there, then you can buy destination ads today.
Got it. But these features like card on file in Messenger...
That you wouldn't know. The card on file in Messenger is there, but it's on per user basis.
Yeah, but is that enabled to anyone building a bot, or is that a feature that we need to get FB to...
Yeah, you need to be cleared for that, yes. But we are about to open it up for everybody.
But also,
right now,
if you want to be cleared and you're part of a common stand, can hook you up.
I could help you.
Okay, moving on. We can get back to bots if people are interested in a bit. Have you heard of this term, human
It's
assisted?
funny, like you're the only one who is doing this.
Yeah, I know.
which is great.
Have you heard of human assisted AI? I'm guessing you have.
I've heard. Yeah.
Great. And so M is a perfect example of
Yeah.
that, right? Question is, can you share at a high level what that actually looks like? And also, do you believe the cost curves can come down significantly to be able to scale a product that relies on human assistance? Yeah.
So the way it looks like right now, it's about like whatever 25% of the queries automated, something like that. That's going through M. We started from like close to 0, but that's the whole point. So we're training slowly but surely. The idea was, again, in the very what we figured out is that there is no way that we can do everything for everyone in sort of like fully in a good consumer experience way. So we said, okay, so then let's try to do everything for a small group of people, whatever, we have like a couple of 100,000 for a small group of people, and then once we figure out which intent can be 100% automated, we will just make it available to everybody. And so now we're at the point when we are starting to get to the point when we can start spinning out those intents, and that's part of what F8 was about. So we did that OmniM thing, and so whenever you are, let's say when you're in Messenger, when you're like whatever, you say thank you, then it's going to give you like a bunch of sticker suggestions. That's that. But on top of that, then we are doing the same with locations, and we are doing the same with rights, but then we're also experimenting with opening it up to the third parties. The first example is delivery.com, which is basically plugged into that M infrastructure, and the idea is that, again, if you say, if you say would be great to get a piece of pizza, then it will be just like, okay, here's the 3 places nearby where you can get pizza from, and you go and order it. We don't know if that use case is going to work or not, but the idea is that third party can plug in into the M infrastructure, and it will be able to figure out, and we're pretty good at that now actually. So if you say that pizza yesterday sucked, it doesn't do that. Versus when you say like it would be great to grab a piece of pizza, right? And so we're getting at the point when we're like at whatever 70% sort of like click through on that, and we know when not to say it, which is pretty good result. So we're kind of trying to optimize for that. And so if it works, then the idea is that we open it up for third parties on per intent that we can automate, and then we go from there. So there's a long time before like everything is automated for everybody, but say a couple of years from now, I think a bunch of intents we will be able to start fulfilling for people.
So you do believe the cost curves can come down such that you can support this for many use cases across hundreds of millions of users in like, I don't know, in like about 5 or 6 years? Yeah.
I mean, I can go deep on that. So yes, I believe that's the short answer. Do this if you don't want me to say.
No, you can go deeper.
I can go deeper. I do believe sort of like.
In other words, can a startup do this? Does it have to be a Facebook?
Oh, got it. So can a startup do that? So startup can do that in a very verticalized way if it has access to the proprietary set of data. Example would be what I would invest in, like as an example. Again, like making it up, maybe I wouldn't invest in it, but I would have to look into that a little bit deeper. But let's say you are building. You're doing AI for sales, and what it is that there's no way, like no one knows what's going on, what sales techniques, like this is very proprietary. I don't know, like if you're a sales guy and you're selling something, I don't know what you're selling, whom you're selling it to, what are you saying to sell, and why it's been sold, and how to actually empower everybody else. You don't know what's going on. So let's imagine all of those voice conversations are being recorded, transcribed, and AI. That would allow me, now let's pick up a vertical. So that's not exciting yet. Let's now pick up a vertical, again, making it up, pharmaceutical sales. So sales that are selling pharmaceutical data. Salespeople that are selling pharma products. If I can do that, that is very proprietary data. There are a bunch of network effects in that, because like if I actually process it, then I can help Pfizer people to sell Bristol Myers. I can use Pfizer's data to improve sales through for Bristol Myers and vice versa, as long as I stay in Switzerland. The people say, like, you probably will say, like, no one's going to give you the data. I disagree. Like, for example, examples in industry would be like Athena Health. That's freaking like claims data. They're doing that. So if you actually provide the service and you actually can increase sales, or you can fix the back office, they all do that. And all you have to do is just to get one to agree, and then everyone else agrees. So if you know how to get like Pfizer to agree, then consider everyone else agreeing. And just because like whatever, Athena Health, which is whatever, $10 billion company now, continues to grow like 25% a year just because the market is so massive. They got everybody to agree, they got United to agree, and then everyone agreed, and so they process all the claims data, and that improves the claims data processing for everybody. And that's why, and that's a very strong network effect in a place like that. So, do I believe in that? I totally believe in that, because you are actually helping the pharma people to sell more, and you as a startup are doing it on a proprietary set of data that no one else will ever be able to put their hand on. And yeah, that makes sense. So you just go vertical and you go where the money is. Now, can startup do that for everything, for like sort of like boil the ocean? That will be hard, because then again, like I don't think you can get access to proprietary data. Google, Microsoft, Facebook will have more data. So basically, if you're building something like that, you need like two components. You need like algorithms they haven't changed for the last 20 years, more or less. I mean, there is new stuff, but if you really boil down to it, it's the same neural networks that I studied when I was at school. People thought it's cool then, and then people didn't think it was cool, and then now it's cool again. The reason why is because there is a computational power now to actually crunch all that data, but big companies obviously have more access to that computational power than anyone else, and then there is data, and so big companies have more data than anything else. So, like if you're a startup, like what are you competing on? You're either competing on algorithms that didn't change, you're competing on data that you don't have, or you're competing on computational powers that others have more access to. So, don't do that.
Cool.
What? I disagree? All right.
I have a lot more questions, but I'm just going to ask one more and then open it up to the floor. So let's talk about growth on new platforms. Like Messenger would be a new platform, and so would VR, and so would a bunch of other new platforms. Traditionally, given that I worked a ton on Facebook platform, and I've seen these apps like first to market or like first to platform seem to be a great strategy for growth on a new platform. But now platforms are getting smarter, they're clamping down, they have these white label systems where you have to get approved. It's not as easy to just simply be first and grow as quickly as possible. And I hear you about building network effects independent on the platforms that you're building for. But what are some good growth techniques to think about when launching on a new platform?
Launching on a new platform. So, like my general belief is that the moment when you're going into growth, you kind of have to be on all the platforms because without it, it's like genuinely very hard because it's like whatever. It's that notification or that was sent from Android that someone else will consume on iOS, and then it will result in emails that someone will look at on the web that then will create some sort of a notification inside Facebook, and someone ends up in whatever, somehow improving your targeting on an ad that you're running on Google. And that's kind of like, and you have to look at all of them at the same time. And if you're not doing one of those things, you're sort of like in disadvantage because you're sort of breaking the chain because like it's that big. There are ads on Google, there are ads on Facebook. There are sort of like graph building exercises again, like on Facebook that you can do. There is SEO on Google, there is SEM on Google. There are like all of those things that you kind of have to like look at, and that's complicated. But it's also a good question to ask. Like, what are the old platforms, and what am I looking at every day from the standpoint of my dashboard in order to be able to figure out what am I missing there. So if that's the framework, and then you can decide, like, I'm explicitly deciding not to do anything when it comes down to ads on Facebook because I'm focusing on something else. But then you know what you are not doing, and then you can get back to that later, and it's sort of like, again, like good mind hack because instead of like worrying about not doing that, you decided not to worry about not doing that until the next opportunity presents itself. And then the new platform actually plays into that framework quite nicely, because if there is a new platform, then you're like, the definition is I need to be on it. Now, if I need to be on it, then how does it rank up against all other work that has been done there, especially given what you just said, which is like that platform is probably smart, that platform probably doesn't want necessarily people to grow out of proportion on them right away. They want to sort of like a little bit of luck evenly distributed. Definitely is sort of like the way we are thinking about it right now, and building, having all those assumptions, you are like, okay, so here's a new platform, and then you just do simple metrics, and you're figuring out like how hard it would be for me to try something new here, and if it's actually easy to do and it's easy to try, yeah, you put it in and then you sort of like try to navigate versus this is going to be my only new bet. And I'm going to like drop everything what I'm doing and focus on that. This is just becomes another axis in your sort of like multi-dimensional game when you're like, okay, so here I'm going to invest a little bit in that platform and I'm going to see if it worth continuing to invest. That would be my framework.
Cool. Opening it up to the floor. Any questions?
You mentioned earlier kind of, and maybe I just described it as a negative view on kind of paid referral. What have you seen not work or work around kind of that idea of the, hey, $15 for a friend, $100, you know?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have like negative view. It's just most obvious thing to do, and most obvious thing to do. They either work very, very well or they don't work at all. It's like kind of like very hard to find any minimum in there. The problem is with that is the signal you're sending is that especially if it's the signal you're sending is that I, as a receiver, also will see this, and so then I will know that you've been paid money for me to use that service. And then I'm wondering, are you giving that service to me or recommending that service to me because you love it or because you got paid for sending it to me? And it tends to be huge problem with conversions on that, because what you might find is that you got twice as many referrals and you're paying money, but the conversion is actually half because people know on that end that that's how it is. And then the secondary effect there is that, and that's sort of like first type effect. Secondary effect there is that it's like now I know that that's how you're gonna feel if I send it to you because I just felt that. And so then do I send it to you or I don't send it to you because he sent it to me and that kind of made me feel weird and so I don't want to know. I don't want to do that. So what happens in that case, if $15 is important to me, I do send it, so you're now bottom fishing. If it's actually not important to me and I like the service, I'm not going to send it. So it's like a double negative effect now. So it really depends, but those things are very hard to work out. And you have to spend some time with people talking to them before you actually like commit to that. Because like if you get into that trap, that can like tank the whole thing. And I've seen some things being tanked because of that.
Other questions? Yeah.
One of the things that I find most interesting about chat interfaces is just the replacement of traditional interfaces where you don't need to design a website, you don't even need like UX, UI, anything like that. I'm curious what you have seen, or first, what are your thoughts on that, and then have you seen that of people deploying new products with that being the only channel?
I'm generally buying, but it's on per use case basis. The way we are thinking about it is, again, like it depends on the business. For some business it works great, for some business it's not going to work at all. And for some business the speed with which you answer is actually more important than accuracy of the answer. For some business it's not. Sometimes it's really important for me to know that I'm talking to a person. Sometimes it's really important for me, sometimes I don't care. Example, if I'm in the airport, I'm leaving for Los Angeles, I'm like, which gate do I need to run to? I don't care whether it's a person or bot answering me, I just need that to be the right number. And it doesn't even have to be sophisticated, it can just say 40 and that's all I need, actually better. Like I don't need that to be, oh, welcome to our bot, thank you very much for reaching out, like just give me a freaking number. Versus if I'm talking to my doctor, then I'd better know it's not a bot. Or if it's a bot, I better know it is a bot. And so it's completely different thing. So the hard work there is to figure out which category you belong to and what category is actually, what factor is important there. But for some, I literally, like, again, like if I'm in the airport and if it's an airline and that does get play and people use it all the time. If I'm in the airport and I'm like on KLM and if that thing knows that I'm in the airport because we pass location, then the menu it serves up is do you want to know your gate? And then it turns out that's what everyone wants. And so it's way better for me to like tap that UI. It's easy for KLM to configure because all they have to do is just a bunch of actions that we serve on our end based on a bunch of parameters, and then the whole thing works. So yes, really depends on the use case. And so you have to be like really careful with that, in my opinion.
Other questions?
Yes.
Thinking about your job, what's a day in the life of a head of growth? How do you structure your org?
Oh, he's not head of growth.
I'm actually head of product.
Oh, sorry.
I'm VP of product
Okay.
For that thing.
How would you structure a growth org, and what would the day-to-day cadence be like to run the different growth projects?
That depends. Though I did that job before a few times. It depends on the size of the org. What size of the org?
Well, let's say 10 people, because that's probably most relevant to the people in this room.
10 people, I would say that like everyone is on growth team.
Okay. How about 100 people?
100 people is probably the way I would do it is that it would be I would put like data in there. I would put a few engineers in there, and I would put few experiences in there. I would say like onboarding is yours. Figuring out what's the North Star in terms of what you're driving your service to is yours. Like, what is one thing that we should optimize everything for? You need to figure it out. I don't know what it is. You figure it out. Come back to me, whatever, in months, 2 months, but give that to me. Then onboarding is yours, and then watching cohorts from the retention standpoint is yours, and figuring out what our retention is and what are the simple things that we can do around the product in terms of improving the retention is also yours. And so I would give it to, and then like, what do you need from engineering standpoint? And then it's probably would be like, I don't know, like 10 engineers, for example.
So what I heard is you divide it by life cycle, and then you give each sub-team a life cycle goal. Now, are they running multiple experiments at once? Are they all in on one experiment at once? How do you decide what investments to make?
No, they definitely run multiple experiments at once. But it's also, like that's why I said the data, like I'm not talking basics, right? In the sense that like all experiments need to be set up in the right way. Like sort of like standard A/B experiments don't necessarily give you the right answer because you don't, like it depends what you're optimizing for. You don't know the side effects of that. The standard A/B frameworks, they generally don't work because, I'll give you an example. And that's just a basic logic fallacy. Facebook also falls into that like all the time, but so let's say you're running A/B experiment, and let's say, so what you do is that you're basically looking at the data and you're saying, okay, so this is like 51% conversion rate on B and 49 for A, and so we're just gonna switch everything to B. Problem is that, what if you had 60% women and 40% men, and for women, actually A converted way higher than B? Like you will lose that. So unless you will just optimize for the wrong thing, versus the right thing would be, oh, we need to do A for women and we need to do B for men, and that is going to produce the highest conversion. So actually, in order to arrive to that, it's actually pretty sophisticated and pretty hard, because you actually have to run independent variables analysis, because you don't know like how to analyze that thing for. And general cuts wouldn't do it, because if you cut by gender and you will cut by age or whatever, you're not necessarily going to figure out what that thing is. In this particular case, cutting by gender will do it, but if it was people from Minnesota versus people from San Francisco, you would lose it if you just cut by gender and age. So you need to like configure your systems to actually do that stuff. That's not easy. And most people don't want to do that because for a number of reasons. One, it's hard. B, you have to understand math.
But honestly, I don't know if I agree with that stat. Like, let's say you had a 100-person team, and intuitively you arrived at like maybe 2 solutions, and you know that you could control variables, but you don't want to build a localized solution for these independent variables. So you're going, I mean, it's not a bad idea to use an A/B test to like come up with something that's directionally appropriate.
No, I'm not saying A/B tests are bad. The question is like of course, like 51 to 49 is better. The question is how deep you want to go. So to get the directional appropriativeness in the world when you are trying to come up with one interface for everybody because you can control multiple interfaces, that is a better solution. Where it breaks is that if you actually, that's what that Iron Pearl was, the last company that I did, that PayPal bought, is if you're actually trying to go deeper than that and you're trying to say, well, actually interfaces need to be behavioral, and depending on who is coming, you can serve different things, and it doesn't have to be managed by a content management system, then like it's deeper level, but on 100 people, depends on the product, but on 100 people in today's world, I think it starts being worth it when you are building behavioral interfaces versus just the interface that converts the best on average. Because that gives you extra like 3, 4, 5, 10 percentage points that might actually define success from failure for your business. But yes, directionally, if all you can do is just A/B test and you cannot go deeper, then of course it's better than not doing anything.
I have a different answer to this question to some degree. I think that when you have a 100% org, I still think it's very hard to determine if you have true product market fit. And what a lot of people fall into the trap of is like, let me evaluate the top of the funnel and the different sources people are coming through, let me evaluate the funnel, let me see what converts, etc. And you can do all these like sorts of like random like growth tactics and measurements and changes in UI and all of these different things, but you'll notice that you only see like certain percentage point improvements in this growth funnel. And as like a 100% company that like probably has like a couple of million users, that is not what you're looking for. So at that stage, I would recommend that whatever growth team you build is looking for step function increases. And step function increases aren't optimizations around like the registration page or the email conversion or things like that. It's actually like, is there a particular barrier in the product that like prevents an entire demographic from using it? Like, are you able to achieve like some sort of like virality via the product that is like, that should be a feature build as opposed to an optimization, and have you forgotten to build that feature or not build that feature? And I think that today these startups and a lot of like young companies like just dive into like, let me analyze top of the funnel, let me analyze registration page, let me analyze email conversion, let me do paid acquisition, without thinking about STEM functions, feature changes that will actually accelerate growth by the degree that you want it to accelerate. And I mean, honestly, perfect example, Dropbox, 100% team, 20 million users, started with this whole growth thing, with Drew at the head of the thing. And even at that point, I would say that Dropbox had not achieved product market fit. Because what the true driver of Dropbox usage was enterprise. And at that point, we were still thinking of it in terms of like consumer plus end businesses, consumer being like the primary funnel towards businesses. All that was bullshit. It was only like 3 or 4 years after that that we realized that, you know, business and teams is like what the product is all about. So again, like, I think people really should think hard about what the growth team looks like and what it means for the company at that stage of the company.
I agree with everything you said. So it's everything what I said is relevant the moment when there is a product market fit. Until then, you should look for step function, and I also agree that most people sort of like lose sight of that, and everyone is going for sort of like simple optimizations, which are like awesome if you are ARPU-driven business when there is like money, and again, like that's when it does work. When you spend $1 to buy a user, and that user gives you 99 cents. So this business will go out of business versus the business where you spend $1 and they pay you $1 and 1 penny. That business can be very, very large. And difference is 2 cents. So simple optimizations can get you over the hump potentially, but it works in e-commerce and subscriptions and stuff like that. When you're dealing with something like Dropbox, when you're trying to build massive platform, then you have to look like how's that massive platform going to grow, where the users are, and how they're going to use it, and then you end up like, okay, we don't have product market fit until we actually get to the team level and into the enterprise, and so until we get there, have to constantly look at time, right? And
yeah, I think it is business model specific, which is why I was like classifying this as consumer subscription SaaS to some degree. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have one follow-up to Richie's question about emerging platforms. You have some really interesting AR features that are kind of as a part of Messenger now. I'm curious if do you think there'll be more growth in AR becoming a part of our like actual everyday lives through software improvements, like actually having occlusion. You know, I see Bulbasaur run out that door and then it's gone, or through hardware improvements. So it's like some of those features you have now, but just in glasses that are this.
Yeah. So we're trying to figure it out. So definitely, I mean, yes, but we see more AR in everyday life, and we think it will be emerging platform, and that's how we are trying to approach that, and that will be, in a sense, like area where the growth will be hard to control for us, and we wouldn't necessarily do that. Which might be actually a good platform to grow, is just in the sense that we're probably never gonna like try to make money on that. So let's say we're opening up a platform for all the AR effects, and you can slap them on top of camera or just build them into the conversational interfaces. We're always gonna stay in ads. We are unlikely to try to do that. So what it means is that we would just want to enable connectivity between developers and our users, and money goes to whoever produces the best content, in a sense. So the same can be said about things like stickers, and maybe we should just open it up and then the whole thing is working the same way. So, so now, whether it's going to be glasses, whether it's going to be software acceleration type, or whether it's going to be like something in my ear and it's going to be actually hearable type of stuff, like I don't know. Regardless, we're probably going to try to bet on software first before anything else, just because it makes sense and it scales. But we are, like, I'm a big believer. It feels like that's where the world is going. It feels like it's going to be a while before there are like other things that you're going to be actually putting on yourself in order to augment the reality around you, versus that thing is right there and it can do a lot of wonderful stuff. And so that means that that's going to be software. Now, a bunch of that stuff can be voice activated, but that's different from hardware.
That's
focus.
just software.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I'm saying, where it blurs is that, let's say, that voice activation happens through the device that I have in my ear.
Yeah.
And so that's, but software, yeah. I think software. But again, my personal thing. Yeah.
So Ruchi talked earlier about the SaaS and the sort of growth of these bottom-up SaaS models, and you also talked about the importance of sort of having proprietary data. Do you see any emerging issues or sort of questions of who will own the data as these models spread more horizontally rather than sort of top-down through the enterprise? Whether it's the employee who owns their data, whether it's the software platform, whether the companies are going to try and be more restrictive, and how that might affect growth models.
I think companies will try to be more restrictive. But I think if you provide the service the company needs, then they're going to open up all the data, the history. Again, there hasn't been more price data in the, rather than like whatever, insurance companies' claims data. That's their bread and butter, but they opened it up when they figured out that it's actually billions of dollars of extra money they're talking about there if they actually tap into everyone else's claims data. And if there is a Switzerland out there that they can trust, then it works. So if that happened, then the rest of the stuff gonna happen as well. Like, I don't know how government gonna behave. You are as good of a predictor of that as I am. But if it's just between companies and startups, I think it's going to be all figured out. It's going to be fine.
I think the key is if there's incremental revenue add or additional cost savings, that is a strong incentive for people to share, and they will figure out the regulatory hurdles to make it happen.
And in that sequence, right? So if you can drive additional revenue, that's like you have pretty wide opening. If you have if you are on the cost saving side, then it's like I'm gonna think twice, and everything else is like probably no starter. Yeah.
Any more questions? Last question. Is there a hand? I don't see a hand. Joe, do you have your hand up?
No, sir.
Who has the hand up? Yep.
Yeah. How well does Facebook advertising on Facebook work for B2B applications?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I can follow up. You can follow up with me. I can look. I would think. I don't know. I don't know. It might work very well, actually. I just wouldn't know. I need to look into that. It's an awesome question.
It's a good talk to have next. We can invite Boz or someone to talk about ads on Facebook.
Yeah,
that would be a
he
good
would
talk.
he would know.
Yeah, and he would love to talk.
No comments.
I mean, I probably work with him longest time. So,
Yes. I love him. He likes to talk.
Okay, I just have one question. What are some good sources that, blogs or material that you can read to keep up on this?
Oh. Yeah, exactly. Blogs. I could compile the list. The materials, yeah, there is a bunch of stuff on nfx.com. There are certain things on, so Sean Ellis puts out good stuff on sort of like growth marketing type of stuff.
What's that?
Sean Ellis.
Sean Ellis.
Yeah. Do you remember the website?
Growth Hackers.
Yes, growth hacker. So he came up. He actually coined the term growth hacker, which I don't like, but I like Sean. So those things are good. Andrew Chen used to write a good blog. He's still out there.
But now he's busy.
Yeah, now he's
Yeah,
busy.
but the content is still up there and it's still relevant if folks want to.
Content is still there and it's definitely there. And so those are sort of a kind of, I think, where to go. And Sean just published the book. I haven't read it yet, but
On the B2B side, probably Heaton and Shaw.
Oh, yes.
Also, what's his name? Thomas?
Tomas.
Oh, Tomas?
Yeah.
Tomasz, yeah.
Tongus. Yeah,
Tomas
Tongus
yeah.
is really good on enterprise stuff.
Yeah, he's good on enterprise stuff, but Heaton is the real deal. So he is one of the best thinkers when it
Great.
comes down
Well,
to
he's
growth
coming to
enterprise.
speak soon enough, so that's
I love him. He's very smart when it comes down to that stuff.
He only schedules 6 days in advance, no longer than that. Great. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate this.
Hopefully it was helpful.
It's very helpful, very interesting. I learned.
These were good questions.
Thank you. Yeah, and we have food, guys. Thai food in the kitchen if you guys are hungry. Tons of wine in the kitchen if you're hungry as well.
We should have started this line. I would have woken up faster.